Stepping out of cover, I look up at this gigantic bot. It's mostly white with a little bit of red accents, and it doesn't seem to notice me. I simply say, "What's up?" And the big bot just kind of hears me, looks around like, where the hell did that come from? Is someone talking? I yell, "Down here." He looks down and is actually surprised. "Oh, I believed I was alone." He looked around some more. "Should I be concerned at this moment?" I say to him, "That's funny. I was going to ask you the same thing." Then again, I also want to say that you're looking good, especially from the last time I saw you. He looks confused a little, as he looks down and doesn't recognize me, my color scheme, or anything. And then I mentioned the mass casualty event when my initial invasion of this planet, where we assaulted one of the purple strongholds to make sure we had that foothold I mentioned. We got sucked in. We got completely suckered into a kill zone. And once we were there, they hit us from the flank with their giant green buddy of theirs, and of course, a few of his friends. That big green and purple monstrosity devastated our positions. I mean, we focused fire and we were able to force him back with all of our heavy stuff, especially our shoulder-fired weapons. We neutralized most of the base defenses at that point, and thanks to a lull in the fighting, we were able to get our wounded out, but I still remember dragging two of them out myself as I'm bleeding. I ran back, got some more. It was bad. It was really bad. I remember at that point, we saw this giant jet coming in. I didn't know why it was shaped like that with that very large red piece on top. And then it landed time and time again to get the wounded out, never seeming to stop, just halting long enough for us to load as many as we could. It didn't matter if they were biological, cybernetic, or didn't matter. If they were wounded, they went in and he was out the door. One time I actually ran out and the door was already going up. I had to jump out. I thought about it too. And he only became a humanoid once. Once when he landed and we couldn't get our wounded in. He transformed really quick, landed on his feet, and put down an impressive amount of hurt on the enemy lines. Even landed a knockout blow on some blue aircraft type right in front of me. Seriously. That blue guy just went straight over the top of our heads and landed in a heap of crap. I swear, one punch from that big right hand sent that little boy into the promised lands for sure. And after all that, he just changed back to that jet and got more out as fast as he could. I was grateful to see him. When I mentioned all this, he seemed to almost grin, trying to figure out what the hell, why did I look like one of his type of creatures? Then he started looking around again as though he was looking for a whole bunch my size to just jump out of nowhere and ambush him. He said, "Are you alone?" I said, "Not quite." I turned over and called Slipstream out. When I called her name, the big man seemed to be on guard as he reached for his weapon behind his back. I told her, whoa, what are you doing?" She walked out and he was just astonished at what he saw. He asked, what happened? I do not understand. That is when I tell him, "Sit down and I'll tell him everything." As he sat there, I told him about Primus and he was shocked. He was amazed that I even got that close to the core without dying. And he was amazed that Primus did what he did to me. After he pondered the whole idea of a human like me suddenly not really being human anymore, which I kind of snickered off, I didn't want to say anything, I asked him why he no longer carries the symbol of his faction. He used to have it right there on the lower part of his chest, or center of his torso. I mean, seriously, it looks red and I see purple in there, but it looks like it all got scraped off. That's when he got very solemn. He mentioned how he never truly understood the war itself. He was a scientist before the war even started, a researcher. In fact, so was Starscream. When I heard that, I was like, oh, the rumors are true. Huh. He told us how he got lost on a recon mission, him and Starscream, and he crash landed on Earth, and of course, let's face it, all chemical reactions stop at below freezing, and this somehow forced him into stasis lock. When he was thawed out, he got out of stasis lock and ended up fighting on both sides of the conflict multiple times. It seems though whichever side was more up to his personality. But he hung his head very low, as he said how he realized that both sides had reasons for fighting and how he tried to help end things by helping humanity. He thought if he did that, maybe the war would end. See that there's another option, which I did thank him profusely for. He saved many of my men, and I was one of the last trips out. Yet after we had accomplished our mission, and we had made the beachhead for our supposed allies, the war seemed to stagnate on, just back and forth, ebb and flow, no one really taking full control of the planet anymore. He could see that the leadership on both sides was more concerned with continuing the war instead of ending the damn war. Because of this, he ended his affiliation for both sides and essentially became a Ronin. I told him he's a Ronin warrior. He looked at me kind of sideways, knowing that he didn't like being a warrior. He's a big man. He's strong. He's powerful. He's good at fighting, but not everybody who's good at fighting actually wants to go out and pick a fight. That's when I asked him if he wanted to aid me with my mission. He asked me what it was, and I gave him a complete breakdown, and he was interested as it seems more of a mercy mission above all else. If I could get there, perhaps I could save even more. He then informed me that all factions would actually hunt us down in our current conditions. He confirmed that a smaller bot like me and Slipstream, if forced to be attached to one of the larger ones, would increase that larger one's power so much it was crazy. I got nervous a little bit, realizing how big this guy was sitting in front of me, and I asked, "Are you foreshadowing if we join up with you or something? And are you looking for more power by any chance?" With that, he audibly laughed, a big belly laugh. "Look at me. Does it look like I need more power? Both factions wanted me because I am so powerful already. Yet, when you show potential of being more powerful than a leader, they get suspicious of you, and you can't do anything on your own. You're constantly being monitored, constantly being harassed to make sure that you stay in line. That is, unless you've already shown that you're willing to blindly follow orders from their commander, no matter how egregious it might be." I simply lean back a little bit and say, "Well, seems no matter what planet we come from, we all have that same problem." We all look at each other and kind of snicker and chuckle right before we begin to make our plan. We take off a little bit after Cybertronian midnight. The three of us fly towards our destination, and unfortunately, because of that, we have to fly past a contested city. There's going to still be some fighting, which means there's going to be hostiles there. As we approach, Slipstream and I fall back behind Skyfire, and then he opens up his bay doors in the rear. We fly in, and Slipstream tells me to relax as I'm sitting there fiddling my fingers as I'm just getting worried. She tells me to not be paranoid, telling me about we should get past unnoticed, so calm your thrusters. Looking out of the bay window, we can see the fighting off in the distance. The city itself is in ruins. Smoke rising from, I don't know if it's the buildings on fire or another bot just got torched. Seeing the massive array of weapons that seems to be sticking out of every single building, whether or not they're functional or not, made me a bit nervous. Almost scared shitless if I'm being honest. That's when I remember what Primus did to me, and I double-check my guns. And I simply grin a little bit, thinking, okay, yep, I can defend myself. This'll work just well. Realizing that these weapons that are strapped to me are so good, I almost give them a hug as I think, ooh, I love guns, my friend. Ooh, yes. That is when the sentinel forces of a certain faction approaches, and I think to myself, well, this is the end of this trip. We've just been made. The aircraft bots demand that Skyfire land to be searched. He of course refuses, as he's not part of the faction. He can go wherever he pleases, and they decide to not let him go when they begin to get in attack position, get right behind him. If they fire, there's nothing he can do. Nobody reacts that fast. He continues to tell them that he's not part of any faction, so they've got a whole bunch of offs that they can go fuck. That's when they fire a single shot that makes Skyfire rock hard to one side and barely gets missed. With that, he yells to us in the back, "Prepare to defend us!" Then I see guns drop from the ceiling, full automatics, and both me and Slipstream grab them as the gates open up wide. The moment the pursuing craft are within our sights, I hold down the butterfly and open up. The enemy scatters from behind us, and I have to lock my boots to the deck to keep us from falling over. And if I fell over, well, I'd probably just fall out. Skyfire does his best, dipping, dodging, and swerving every single way, but he is a big boy, and he's a giant target. And eventually, we end up over the city as he tries to use the buildings as cover so he doesn't get blasted out of the sky. That's when he just yells at us to jump. "What?" I yell back. "You can either stay in here and die, or you can make the jump and die. Your choice." I kind of chuckle a little bit because that's a human line. However, I try to burst a little bit of fire out, but Skyfire lurches to one side, and I know he's been hit. He says, "Jump! Jump now!" Slipstream jumps, and I turn to give a quick salute before following. In that moment, I can see him, and he's hit a lot worse than I thought. Almost the entire port side is on fire. Thankfully, he still has his wings, but I lose track of him as he passes behind one of the buildings. I think to myself for a second, wait, did I actually jump without a chute? I see Slipstream down below me, and she changes into her aerial form, and it takes me a moment, as I'm still not used to it, to do the same thing. We then try to weave through the buildings to get away from those that pursue us. As it turns out, Skyfire was right. All the bots that seen us jump out stop their focus on him and aim towards us. Even those on the ground seem to stop, see two of us flying past, and are absolutely in shock. A few of them actually take pot shots at us too. The flying bots that broke away from Skyfire follow us and try to get as close as they can. Silently, I give him a prayer and wish him well. He did risk a lot to get us at least this far. Unfortunately, like the man says, everybody gets boarded sometimes. Me and Slipstream end up separating a bit, trying to lose our pursuers. We use our better maneuverability, being smaller, to be able to get through difficult areas, places so small that they can't follow. I'm able to transform to something else, use my feet to thrust, slow down, and then jump straight up away from a building. And I watch another one try to do the same thing. Unfortunately for him, he's too big, even though he brings his nose up. He turns on those turboprops on his wings, but that's not enough to stop him before he basically belly flops into a building. Not long after, I guess they thought they had me cornered, as I see a blue aerial bot diving in his robotic form, reaching for me, saying, "I got you now." I immediately turned, changed back into my aerial form, and burned him with my own rockets, scorching his hand really, really bad. He even yelped a bit as his metal hand began to melt. As I take off in another direction, I see a purple one, and he yells, "You missed, Thundercracker, but I won't." As he's about to grab my wing, he's blasted sideways right into another building. Slipstream goes right past him, goes, "Wrong as usual, Skywarp," and then takes off. We continue to dance around the city, trying to find an avenue for escape, as I'm trying to get another aircraft, this time a solid white one with some sort of fans on its wings, off my tail. I look over and I can see that Thundercracker's come back around and he's making a play for Slipstream in his plane form. Unfortunately, I don't think she can see him. Immediately, I bank that way, and right as he gets close, I fly right overhead, change into my human form, holding the weapon in my hand like I've been trained so many times, and I blast him right in the cockpit, saying, "Don't you touch her!" Then I transform just as he goes tumbling. Eventually, we finally got out of the city and rotate around each other in kind of a spiral formation. One from a distance would think that we're trying to dance against each other, but we were actually celebrating, thankful that we got away, although a few of these other flying bots are more than a little pissed. As it turns out, our maneuverability makes us a very difficult target to catch. But I will say it got pretty sporting in there a few times, especially when they're working in groups. However, it seems as though they're not trying to work together. It's more everyone for themselves, but when everybody's trying to grab you at the same time, it's trying to basically play an opposite game of tag. You're it and everybody's trying to get you. As we travel towards the setting sun, we laugh a bit, realizing that we actually got away. We finally escaped. As night falls, we land in a rocky outcropping to rest and to make sure that any patrols coming to find us would think that we're still flying and would totally bypass us. As we relax, Slipstream can't stop talking about her new operating systems, how much faster she is, how more maneuverable she is, how strong her weapons are now. It's like her weapons got condensed down, but they're still as powerful, but now it's a tighter beam. It's as though she is herself for the first time in her existence. I was happy to hear it, but she could see I was still kind of upset. She asked me why, and I simply said, Skyfire. In her world, losses are extremely common. Sparks, in some cases, are considered cheap, so much so that she's actually gotten used to it. A little too much for my taste, but it is what it is. I can't think that way, I told her. He was an ally and a friend when we definitely needed one. Officers that I've dealt with can just look at casualties as numbers on a spreadsheet, but NCOs like I was, we actually give a shit. To us, there's no such thing as acceptable losses. I mean, the concept itself is total bullshit anyway, because no man ever won a war by dying for his country. He made the other guy do that. Slipstream looked at me, grinned a little bit, and then kind of shied away a little bit and said, "You need to stop thinking like a human." I simply told her, "Yeah, good luck with that. Let's just rest a bit, okay? It's going to be a long day tomorrow." I looked over towards a piece of rock that wasn't actually leaning in towards us, but set up as though I could recline myself. I set myself up against the rocks, and I told Slipstream she can come over. At least this way we'll both be covered. She climbed in front of me, and I actually reached my arms down around her waist pretty low. Of course, I had to because her wings were in the way. And then she suddenly moves a bit. She moved a bit weird. At first, I thought my hands were in the wrong place, but then I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. I asked her what's wrong. She said, "I don't know. It's probably nothing." She adjusts her position one more time before finally being still. At that point, I wish I could sleep. But the best I got right now is a partial shutdown mode, as this new body seems to recover its energy. We stay like that for the entire night. Not speaking, just looking at the night sky, seeing one of the moons just sitting there the entire time, almost watching over us as though it's wishing us well. In the morning, we take off, quite literally. It's going to be only a few more hours of flight time before we see it in the distance. Nestled in the shadow of an old rocket base, another neglected piece of this planet's past, our destination. The coordinates from the matrix of the ship said that they would have rallied here if their base was compromised, and it was clear that it was very, very compromised. As we continue to fly forward, we pass by the rocket base, and I think how it looks familiar. I don't know, I've seen this before, I think to myself. but I can't really place it. Where have I seen this before? I don't know, something's off, but then again, everything on this frickin' planet is more than meets the eye anyway, so best not to bust your nugget about it. There's no time to think about it anyway, as we dive in low, very low, and aim for the walls. We're hoping there's a way in, and thankfully, there's an opening we can use just large enough for us. Turning from jet into the metal machine I am now, I slide into the hole, and Slipstream slides in with me as we double penetrate the hole, and we are in. And thankfully, we got in unnoticed. As I look over towards the tunnel itself, seeing that I can't see very well, and all of a sudden, again, the visor drops down in front of my eyes, and suddenly I have complete night vision, as though I'm some sort of eyes glazed over superhero from some crazy movie. Now that I can see, and I look over and Slipstream has the same thing. Again, surprised that she actually has this. She is up feeling it. It's like, when the hell did this become an option? I look at her and say, okay. I reach out, grab her hand, and we get ready to walk. I said, now, there's only one question. Where the hell are they? Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me on Chapter 7 of this series. Now before I go, I need to send out some great big thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be Prozac and Pancakes, Guardian Sage, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, Julius Boone, MTF Guard, and Erica Gem. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.